Hello. Um, wow. Do we have a lot to talk about today? If you clicked on this video and you thought it was going to be another recap video of the social media, I don't even know what to call it, firestorm that took place this past weekend, I'm here to tell you it's not. I'm not doing another recap video because I think over time I have turned into a bit of a analyst when it comes to how things unfold online, a bit of a strategist. And I started off, as we all know, as being pretty much almost a 90% storytelling, story time account. In fact, the way my channel looked a year ago compared to how it looks today is totally different because I wiped out about 50% of, not 50, maybe 30% of my inventory on this channel. And a lot of it was personal stories. And you know, if you've been here, you know the reason why I decided to do that. And in my brain ever since then, and with my mouth, I have thought, if you share certain things about yourself, specifically your romantic fails, you can expect to be shamed and questioned and criticized by the internet. It's not worth that experience. Call a friend, write it in a journal, make a video and just record it for yourself, but don't post it anywhere. Did I already say write it in a journal? But whatever you can do, keep those kind of experiences to yourself because the internet historically is really, really mean when it comes to negative romantic experiences. Historically, I don't know how many people I have seen come forward and be like, okay, this is what happened to me on this date. And it really looks like, number one, they ignored red flags. The internet hates that. They hate that. They gave somebody a chance that they shouldn't have given a chance. Whew, the internet don't like that. And especially if it happens to be a Black woman, because there's already so much negative rhetoric out there about Black women and our desperation to be married or to be loved. And if we're seen as not leveling up or not choosing our best or not, you get it, not being feminine, not letting them come to us, not choosing high value men, not being a high value woman to a high value, the rhetoric is out there. It's deafening. And if you wade into that rhetoric with your own personal story of, hey, this is how I messed up, this is what it looked like, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So for me, in my mind, since I decided to take a lot of my content down, it has translated to storytelling online is something that needs to be regimented. It needs to be protected. You need to protect yourself. In fact, if you want to tell a story, don't. And as you can imagine, as someone who is naturally, I literally tell stories. I told a story to the guy in the when I went to get coffee the other day, and neither one of us knew what I was saying because I hadn't had caffeine yet. But he literally was like, okay, wait, what? And so I slowed down and I told him, and he was like, oh, okay. And we shared a laugh or whatever. And I got to my car and I was like, man, I really be just, I love to communicate. I love to tell stories. It's how I make new friends. It's how I bring people. It's me. It's my personality. So you can imagine the kind of darkness that has sat in my brain for the last year around doing that sort of thing. And just the hyper vigilance over what I say and how I say it and who I say it about. And I think because of that, I've been very attracted to any situation where somebody says something and they receive the wrath of social media. And I was actually going to do a story about one of these people earlier this month, a woman who shared a story where she got rejected by a matchmaker. I don't know if you guys saw that one. It was over on TikTok, got 1 million+ views. And the comment section, honestly, would make me want to jump out of a window and roll in glass. Like, it's some of the meanest stuff. And I'm not saying that people don't deserve to be asked questions, that they don't deserve to be tactfully criticized, but social media can take it too far. So there's definitely been a big blinking sign in my brain for the last year. Restrict, restrict, restrict. Watch it, watch it, watch it. And I've also spent a lot of time voicing that. Most of my videos when I talked about like what was going on online with different celebrities, this and that, blah, blah, blah. I would say, now, the big issue here for me is that they said it on the internet. And when you let the internet in to your domestic issues, your romance issues, your family issues, the next thing that follows is not going to be good. You're not going to like that. So you can imagine my surprise when over the weekend, I see that a woman with a 50-part story, 50 parts, and they've uploaded here to YouTube now, and it is now 4 hours. It's totaling 4 hours. So if you sat all the way through her story, you done sat through 4 hours of a story time. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Someone once got upset with me because I talked about them in a story. I didn't name them, but I did talk about an experience we had that I did not like. And they were like, and what kind of idiot records hour-long stories? Are you insane? And I was like, well, I do what the people want, okay? And I have heard a lot of times that people like longer stories. They like longer videos. If they're going to sit down and listen to something, in this day and age, we talk so badly about people's attention spans and, don't nobody have time to focus on all that. Man, if they're going to sit down and listen to something, people going to sit down and listen. We will sit there and binge an entire series of television, 8 hours in one day. We could sit down and watch something and listen to something for sure, okay? And since I started doing, or when I was doing story times, and even now when I still do them and record them and post them, usually over on Patreon, they are at least an hour long. At least. I be putting in every detail I can. I put in little asides, music interludes. Give people something to watch, and they'll watch it. But 4 hours is a bit long. 4 hours is a bit long, but people didn't care because the way she told the story, and if you haven't seen it yet, there's so many recaps right now online, and also, there are threads you can read. Everybody pretty much agrees that the best way to take in this story is to actually go and watch it. Watch it all the way through. Watch all 50 parts. So, and she's got a playlist on her account. So the stories will just keep playing one right after the other. Anyway, I know people will sit down and watch 4 hours. I know. And so it's surprising because it's not every day. And right now, short form content is what we prioritize. But it happens. People still got it in them. If you were one of the people that did that, then you know what unfolded in the life of this woman. And I don't think I've named her yet. I know I've shown her up here on the camera, so I'll go ahead and name her. Her social media handle is Reesa Teesa. And if you watched what happened to her, and you are a viewer and taker in of media, and you like stories and you want to follow along, then you were probably gripped and hooked by the level of deception and manipulation and just ridiculousness that this woman was exposed to after entering into a relationship with this man. I'll also say this, if you didn't watch because it was triggering for you to see or hear about somebody that went through something like that, I understand that too. I'm very sensitive to situations where a man was lying or hiding something or manipulating or doing whatever. I never been in nothing close to what she went through, but it's only because my situations got cut off after about 3 weeks. One time it was 36 hours. There's always been like some kind of a block put there. And that's why a lot of times I say there, but for the grace of God, go I, when it comes to really, really toxic situations, because I be getting removed. Doors be getting shut down. Things be getting closed. So, if you didn't watch it for that reason, I get it. But if you did, you were probably blown away. And people say they were blown away for a number of reasons, her storytelling, her character, just the plot and everything. Of course, you probably also noticed that the internet did what the internet does, which was incredibly triggering for me. They went and they found this man, Legion, that she was dealing with. They exposed him. They posted his social media. Ooh, that was triggering for me because that has happened in the past when I've told a story, obviously not to that extent, but people they can't leave it alone. They have to finish the puzzle. And I know that there's other creators this has happened to as well. One that sticks out is Elise Myers. She told a story about a guy that she dealt with when she was young, and they went to the same church and they had a bad experience together. And so Elise was like, yeah, this is what happened, and he hurt my feelings and whatever. one of her followers went and found out, did a deep dive. What neighborhood did she grow up in? What church might she have gone to? Called the church, found somebody who knew the man, got his name, and started sending him hate messages on his social media accounts. And Elise never named the guy, but just saying, we went to the same church when I was in high school was enough for a very ambitious internet supporter of her to go in and do this work. And it's a very scary thing about storytelling. If you have not ever experienced that or been on the other side of that, it's like, wait, what? Even if you don't say names, you don't do whatever. Not saying names and not directly incriminating anybody in whatever you're talking about leaves a lot of space for you legally. I know, I've asked. But it's still just like, oh, shit, when you see that people have gone through that much trouble. And it's very frustrating to me. And so it was when I saw that happen to her, I was like, oh, my God. And I wasn't alone. The amount of videos that were made directly addressing that person who decided to do that there was a lot. And the poor girl who did, and I say poor girl because she really thought she was doing like the people a favor by showing this man. And some people agree. Some people say we should be warned about a man like him because of the extent of his tomfoolery. But a lot of people also agree that her decision to show his face took the story away from Reesa in a way that could have been dangerous for her. And you don't do that. You don't, if the storyteller is not saying names, you don't say names. If the storyteller is not showing faces, you don't show faces. If the storyteller is not basically, you don't, when you do that, you hijack the story. You take that moment for them and you make it about you. And I know somebody out there is like, well, you always make it about you. Shut up. You do it. You do it in a different way. Anyway, I'll also address that at the end. So the reason why I say poor girl when talking about the woman who decided to find legion information is because she had been open on her page about being abused and about giving birth to a baby who died. And the amount of people who are in her comments now saying, it's good that your baby died. You deserve it. Your baby should have gotten away. Your baby needs to get away from you. That's why it died. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But that's what the internet will do. They will take it to that level when you... So if I was her, I would actually completely delete that account and start over some other, I don't know. But it was very triggering for me. I didn't approve of that action. I wasn't surprised, but it happened. A lot of other things happened too. A lot of other things happened too after this story kind of took the internet by storm. The first thing that happened that was kind of incredible was her platform exploded. In a week's time, she went from, I think she had 17,000 subscribers. People are saying whenever she posted part 1, by the time she got to part 50, she had 1.3 million subscribers. As someone who's always struggled to get over 5,000, 6,000 on TikTok, that is an incredible amount of support. And what I will say is when people choose to actually subscribe to you or to follow you, that is an endorsement of you. There's such a thing whenever you're looking at like your analytics as a creator, there is such a thing as the amount of views that your channel has gotten or your page has gotten, your content has gotten, and the amount of people that have chosen to say, I will subscribe and support. And sometimes those numbers are drastically different, especially over on TikTok because it's so easy to have content go viral and a lot of people to see it. I know at one point in time, there was this audio going around that was like, so when I look at my followers versus my views or my likes, you're basically saying I'm funny, but I'm ugly. That was one of the things. Or like, I'm interesting, but you don't want to have nothing to do with me. People actually saying, hey, we want to follow you. We want to support you. Put so much muscle behind you, especially when you get to that million, because now you're social media royalty. Now there's a lot of stuff you can ask for. Now brands can look at you and say, we want to put something in your hand because we have something to gain from that. So that was an amazing thing that happened, in my opinion, with her, the way her platform just exploded. Another amazing thing that happened was her response to going viral. It is no secret. I hate it. The worst thing, and I hate it usually because of the way my videos go viral when they go viral. But yeah, man, almost every time I've gone viral, I have ended up writing some kind of article, making a video about it. And I'm not alone in that. When you go viral, a lot of times your content is put in front of people who are like, who the hell is this person? Why am I being asked to watch this? And as a result, for the first time in your life, you're confronted with judgment and troll behavior that you never thought of before. People misconstruing your message. And if you already felt sensitive about what you were talking about before you said it, going viral a lot of times does not help that, because you get that you're already in defense mode, and then people come in and it's tough. So what I thought was interesting about the way she responded, because the way I respond is to hermit crab, to respond and to say, hey, you know what? This is something I'm seeing in the comments. Leave me alone. And then to retreat. But I like that she went and she held lives. She talked to people. Never could, to this day, I still ain't never done no live. Never. But I think that to me showed that she's uniquely positioned to not only be able to share the story, but to be able to handle what happened afterwards. And the what happened after she shared is the most interesting thing to me, and it's actually why we're gathered here today. And here's what it was. I have never before in my life seen the internet come together so staunchly and so compassionately on behalf of one person sharing what happened to them. Never. What Reesa did this past weekend was an unprecedented internet event. As a storyteller, as somebody who has shared romantic mishaps and disappointments, from the mundane to the really worrisome and hurtful, I have never seen people join together and say, this person deserved better, and we want to make sure her entire life is redeemed after hearing what happened to her. Never. What happened to Reesa as a storyteller is 100% best case scenario. And I think because people big up storytelling so much, because people talk about the importance of being authentic online so much, and because a lot of people take that bait and they will show up and they'll share their story, or they'll be their authentic self, and they end up getting laughed off the internet. Their accounts are now private. They delete their entire platforms. It makes me wonder what gets lost in translation. How come you have some stories that bring people together, catapult people into the stratosphere, engender such love and support and respect? You have other stories that make people feel shame, make them want to retreat, make them regret ever opening their mouth on Beyonce's internet. What is the difference? And so what I want to do before I close out here is I want to talk about what I think it is, what I learned about storytelling through watching everything unfold. Because of what happened with Reesa, there's going to be more people that say, you know what? I can tell my story. I can talk about what happened to me. And before that chapter begins, I just want to weigh in with why I think she was successful versus why other people are not. Because everybody that shares online is not going to be Reesa. The first thing is she is a likable and relatable and valuable narrator. The biggest way you will discredit your own story, lose support from an audience, and in general, be left wishing you had just shut your damn mouth, is by coming across as someone who isn't likable in the first place. If you're not likable, people don't want to root for you. And so when they hear your story, it's like, oh, well, of course you did that. You're stupid. You're delusional. Trust me, I've heard the positives and I've heard the negatives. And what tends to cancel out your overall impact is when these two things don't agree. And so initially going into it, you have to have most people in agreement that you are a good narrator. I think that comes down to, number one, your character. Are you a person that comes across as being honest and trustworthy? Are you somebody, and this is what people said they loved about Reese's story, are you somebody that takes accountability? And what I've learned from that word is that accountability, you taking accountability as a narrator, is subjective to people, right? The way they feel about you and what you went through and what you're dealing with dictates whether or not they think, when you start to explain why you might have done this, it dictates whether they take it as you taking accountability or you making excuses. in my opinion. So for example, if somebody respects you as a narrator and you say, hey, the reason why I did this and I'm owning up to it is because I was feeling ABC emotion. And I know that that's not great, but that's why this happened. Also, this had happened in my past before, and that made me look at the situation and react this way. So just disclaimer, that's what happened here. If people respect you and they like you as a narrator, they'll say, oh, yeah, we've all been there. We get it. If they don't like you, oh my God, you're always making excuses. So why don't you just get over your past then? Is it our fault that I've seen it. It's been said to me. It's been said to other people. I've seen it. And what came across about Reesa was, and I think this worked in her favor, we have no other knowledge of her before this. I didn't even know she had a TikTok. I didn't know anything about her. So we're more likely to empathize with her and to say, hey, we want you to win. We see a clear villain, and there was a clear villain in this story. No matter what she was going into this, no matter who she was, this man that she was dealing with was a clear and present evil. And I think that changes how people feel about you as a narrator as well. Is it clear that you were the victim here? Or is it going to look like by the end of the story, you're victimizing yourself? Which one is it? That's going to change how people perceive you. And that's going to change whether or not they root for you and whether or not they want to support you. The first thing that she did that I thought was incredible, that may not work for every storyteller, is she came across as a reliable and credible narrator. And people began to fall in love and to want to support her because it's like, why would somebody who is so good be faced with this evil that she was faced with? No matter if she was desperate going into it or not. The next thing I think that stood out about her story to me that doesn't always happen to storytellers is that it invoked massive compassion and that compassion was greater than any condescension that was headed her way. Something that was pointed out to me consistently, because when I first saw this and I saw the internet coming together to support this woman who had made a bad mistake in love, which to me in my brain, because of what I've seen online, reads as, you will get no support. You will get no love. You're going to be made into a video that the manosphere laughs at you and look what this dumb woman did. So this compassion and this love, what's happening? Where's this coming from? How I could not make sense of it. And what people pointed out to me was the scope of what she experienced was enough to silence anybody who might want, well, most people who might want to ridicule her or condemn her. I think the way somebody responds to someone maybe getting wet because they didn't bring their umbrella on a rainy day, and the way somebody responds to someone who lost everything in a hurricane is two different responses. Sure, somebody might have compassion, but especially if they've been through it before. Oh, you forgot your umbrella? Man, that sucks when that happens. Oh, if it's not one thing, it's another, right? But then you might also have people that say, how is that my problem? You didn't bring an umbrella. It's raining, idiot. You know what I mean? Like, it just, when the stakes are lower in your story, it's more likely people will feel better about being openly condescending or critical of you. But when the stakes are high, like what she dealt with, a lot of that condescension and criticism, most well-meaning and sane individuals know that there's a time and place, and that's not the time or the place. And so I think that was very powerful, and that doesn't always happen when you tell your story. And whether you receive compassion or condescension is going to make the difference when it comes to your overall experience of publicly sharing what happened to you. I want to go back to something I said a couple seconds ago regarding the difference between telling a story about getting wet in a storm because you forgot your umbrella and telling a story about getting wet in a storm because you were in the middle of a hurricane. High stakes are so important. When you tell a story, people are looking for the why should I care factor, if you will, right? And I have learned that when you're telling something and the stakes aren't particularly high, like it's something that anybody could have avoided with just a little bit of common sense. And, you know, if it happened to you, oh well, but yeah, we'll all get over it tomorrow or whatever. I think what's incredible about Reese's story is the stakes were so high so quickly, and what she was exposed to was so much that it lent her story an additional shield of validity. and softened even the hardest hearts when it comes to caring about another person. I think the more high stakes your story is, the more likely you are to receive interest and have support, because people are, like I said earlier, they're more likely to care about someone when it seems like they struggled with experiences and obstacles that were way out of their control. Bigger stories, ones that with really high stakes, are more likely to not only receive compassion, but for people to look over the mistakes that you might have made and still allow you the dignity of being heard and understood. And so while I don't think you have to have a big, terrible story in order to share, I do think that you should expect just people to respond differently if they don't view you as having as much of a difficult situation as maybe somebody else was dealing with. Now, this next part is very important because, as I said earlier, people went out of their way to find out who Legion was, expose him, whatever. That's very triggering for me. And the reason why it's triggering for me is because nobody that I had ever told a story about, especially things that had happened in the past, knew what I did for a living. And a lot of times these were people that I crossed paths with like a couple weeks, a couple months. Not frequently. We were not in each other's lives for long enough for me to give them for them to be warned, hey, I'm talking about you online. People might come looking for you. Now, first of all, I didn't know people did that. When I first started talking and telling stories, I did not know that the internet was like, the social media bureau of investigations, and they're going to go look for everything about you. Whenever they start hearing, they want to see everything. They want to see, do you have tweets? Do you have this? Do your mama have a Twitter? Who are you? You told that story? Well, who is the person? Well, what jobs have they done? Who else worked with them at that time? Do we know? It happened. And I did not know that. So what I would say too is, one thing this Reesa situation proved to me is, make sure when you tell your story that it is verifiable and people can corroborate your account of events. Because the biggest thing that takes credibility away from you as a narrator is when people say, oh, this person's a liar. They're lying. And the biggest way people in your story will try and take credit away from you is by saying that you are lying. Oh, man, that is the proverbial police baton to the knee. Sorry, I don't know why I did a Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding reference just then, but that is how somebody just rips the rug right underneath you as a storyteller. This person is a liar. There's no way we can believe this. It's just too far-fetched. What I loved about Reesa's story was she was like, I started keeping voice notes, voice recordings. I've got documentation. It's like they say whenever you're doing work in an office and you start to notice that something's not adding up, paper trail, paper trail, paper trail. Make sure you have, if somebody says something to you in a meeting and it's not documented, go back and write them an email later. Hey, earlier you said to me A, B, C, D. Is this correct? So that there's a paper trail. And hopefully that person responds to you. Because if they do, print that thing out and hold on to it. Because of the fact that I do have a history of telling stories, and I probably will again, whenever I'm involved in anything now, I always take a picture. Have some kind of a picture. Have a video. If a man comes into my life and he's stressing me out, which actually did happen recently, keep them voice recordings. Keep those emails. Keep it. Now, the other option is you just don't talk about it publicly. However, you never know. Somebody might choose to publicly talk about you. So, and that's something you have to be prepared for in today's day and age. I think Reese's success as a storyteller, it's not going to do nothing but have a gold rush effect on the internet. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But because of that, now whenever you interact with somebody, you never know if that person might hop up online and say, story time. I want to talk about the time I was at the gas station and this woman took the last bag of chips. Okay, it all started, and you going through the internet, you're like, wait a second, that's me. What would she say? You never know. I think social media has provided a great place for people to share their experiences, et cetera, but it's also produced kind of a surveillance state where you never know if you're being surveilled, taken in, used for content. That is one of my biggest points of shame when it comes to I will say sharing certain things about my life, talking about people in my life and them not being aware of it. And then in one situation, someone finding out. And even though I didn't think what I was saying was horrible or what, the point was that the person didn't know. They didn't know that they were being used for content. And there wasn't nothing I could say after. I was like, yeah, that was wrong. That was wrong. You can expect, I think, if you run into somebody, especially if it's juicy, you can expect that in today's day and age, there might be a chance that they might jump on the internet and they might say, hey, this is what happened. And when they do that, you could be like Legion and you could say, no. I did, she lied. She's lying, liar. But then what happened to him might happen to you. There might be people that say, actually, no, I agree with the storyteller. Then there might be people that do to you what they did to him, which is come online and say, hey, I'm here to corroborate what she said. I believe that Legion's first wife came on, there were people who said, yeah, no, this man is a menace. And that further gave her validity. But even if they didn't do all that, it was important for her to have those verifiable receipts because the internet will ask you for them. The more outlandish something is, the more likely people want to know, how can we prove this is true? And this is because, too, we live in a time where it is not unlikely for somebody to just make something up for rage bait. And I talked about this in another video, but rage baiting is basically people will say something or do something or create a video just to get attention, and it's not true at all. A couple weeks ago, there's these two people that they host a podcast, and it's called Demoted, and one of the hosts is a girl named Corporate Natalie, and I don't know what the guy's name is, but they host this podcast, and in the podcast, both of them were talking about this person who is a Gen Z worker, and they decided, hey, I'm not going to be able to come in for this 8 a.m. meeting that my boss called, or actually, let's go backwards. So they did not know the meeting was coming up. Their boss called them and said, hey, can you make an 8 a.m. meeting, even though their day was scheduled to start at 9? That's their contract hours. And the Gen Z worker responded back, no, my day starts at 9. I have a workout class at 8. And the way that this podcast is set up is that people send in their work situations and Natalie and her co-host talk about them. Well, when they got to this, they were like, oh my God, like, are you serious? This would make me seethe with rage. You have a meeting, you get on the meeting. Like, what a workout class? Like, reschedule. Are you serious? And when I saw that response, I was like, this isn't going to go well for them. And it didn't. The internet responded. There was backlash. I never liked Corporate Natalie anyway, et cetera, et cetera. But the big thing was that somebody stitched that video. And over on TikTok, a stitch is when somebody already has a video and they decide, okay, I'm gonna basically record a response to this. That's a stitch. Somebody stitched the video and they said, hey, I just want to respond to you guys. Of course, I want to be there for my team, but I also pride myself on my personal self-care time. And I'm sorry, but my contract out, this person went into this whole thing about how they deserve to be able to take the workout class. So then Natalie responds to this guy. The responder was lying. They weren't the ones who sent that in, because in the response video, they had made it sound like that. They had said, hey, there was a lie. They made up the whole story. It was all a hypothetical for a joke. What? But that's what happens in today's day and age, with people realizing how much attention you can get from being dramatic, from having the dramatic take on something, from having a big, juicy story. And people will lie. So if you decide to share your story, be like Reesa. Have documentation. Have corroborators if necessary. Because people are going to look. They're going to look to expose. They want to complete the puzzle. Be able to facilitate that for them. Even if you don't intend on that. It's not your intention to show anybody's face. It's not the internet wants to do it. They want to know. Who is it? What's going on here? Very rarely these days do people take anything at face value. I think that's one of the most naive things I did as a storyteller, thinking that, oh, everybody will just take this at face value. Yeah. Everybody will just take the story and leave it. So make sure it's verifiable. Make sure that you have sources of people who will corroborate your version of events, because it just adds up for more peace for you in the end. Okay, the final thing that I want to say that I believe I learned from her is if you're gonna bust up on the scene with a crazy story, make sure that your process for after this is well thought out. One of the things people brought up is that Reesa is an Aquarius, and Aquariuses get a lot of shit for being aloof, withdrawn. They're not emotional. Fantastic. Because one of the toughest things about being online is not just the pushback. It's the out of nowhere overwhelm of additional voices in your head about the situation that you just went through. So in real life, in everyday life, most of us have one or two, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people that we might tell or that might be a witness to what we went through. 10 versus a million is a lot. So if you are an emotional person, if you are a sensitive person, if you're the kind of person that wears their emotions on their sleeve, it can be very hard to go from, yeah, I'm just experiencing this, I just tell my friend about it, to, oh my God, I have a full box of DMs. I have emails. I have, what is this? It can be very hard. And a lot of people don't like that. And a lot of people will take their profiles private. They won't watch the video anymore. They won't go into the comment section. They'll just leave it alone. Reesa was so interesting to me because not only did she face it head on by doing the lives, which again, but in her bio, she put her Cash App. Hey, you feel bad for me? Send me some money. Put some money on it. She had merch. She committed to meeting with her new community every day for 2 hours. Like, she was set up for success. And I think that that's really a mindset and a personality. I don't think everybody can do that. I don't think everybody can handle that amount of intense interest, but she could handle it because it was meant for her to have this this experience. She was meant for such a time as this. And I think as a storyteller who definitely took myself out of the game and put myself on the bench, and I use this comparison and analogy in my in a video where I originally responded to this on Patreon, watching someone win, especially a Black woman, and a Black woman telling a story about being in the trenches when it comes to love, big struggle love, watching people meet her with compassion, embrace her, say to her, well, your story's not over yet. Now it's the restoration part of it. Let's go. Come on. Let's move on. Let's move forward into the new stage of your life. It has been, it's been bittersweet because on one end, I am so confused. Like I said earlier, I'm just like, what? What? You're supposed to be shunned and ridiculed for admitting that you had a part to play in your own twisted love story. Like, that's what the internet. Did I calculate wrong? Yes, I did. And on the other hand, I'm like, yes, she won one for the home team. Because there's so many people who will say, I'll never put my business out there like that. And they look down on you and they'll make little side comments about you. That I would never say this. I'm like, what? Telling all these, are you serious? And I have to admit, I've been on that train for the past year. Like, just watch what you say. You don't, not on the internet. Oh, tell a friend. And I've definitely felt a lot of, like I said, shame about my choices to be open about certain things. But when I see somebody winning like this, when I see somebody who showed up, hey, I want to share. This happened to me. And instead of people saying, ugh, well, you did it to yourself. Black women are so desperate. People said, you didn't deserve this. You're a beautiful person. Let's get you to London. Let's get you to Paris, babe. A new Arabic. It's like a win for the home team. Yes. Storytellers, oversharers, people who have bad romantic experiences. Yes. She figured out, and I said this on my Patreon, she figured out how to be vulnerable about something dark, and she won. I was definitely affected by what went on this past weekend, and so this is my take on it. I'm not going to offer any recaps, like I said, because those already exist. But I did think from a storyteller's perspective, especially as somebody who knows what it's like to put a bad love story out there and get responded to in ways that you didn't expect. And to have that response send you into like a shame spiral and to make you think, oh gosh, so I guess if we come out and we start talking and we speak up, people are always going to shame us. So I guess it's better to be quiet about certain things and only talk about other things. And I'm not saying that's not true, but I am saying that sometimes people will like the narrator so much, they'll be able to empathize so much with the circumstance of what happened, and they will be able to appreciate the story. They will be able to offer compassion, and that person's life and reality will change astoundingly. Sometimes the internet is good. That is my biggest realization from this whole weekend. And I think as I go forward, it will definitely help me work on a lot of the feelings of shame and disappointment that I had around how my own stories were received in a lot of ways. Because I am holding on to that. I can feel it in my neck. Because I'm just now, this whole thing brought a lot of things to the surface for me. So anyway, I thought I would talk through it here. What did you think? You're free to share in the comments below what you think about Reesa, what you hope for her. Please, I'm interested in your predictions. What is she going to do next? Please feel free to share what you think in the comments below, whether it's based on what happened in Reese's story, whether it's based on my comments, whatever. And as always, thank you for watching.